Hello and welcome to I Talk to Ghosts, the podcast that knows that the depths of the paranormal go very deep. I'm your host, Jennifer. I'm a professional medium and a teller of ghost stories, both of which I will share with you in this episode. First tonight, I have for you spooky tales of haunted lakes. I even have my own personal story, which might not necessarily be paranormal. I'm not sure, but it's definitely an experience that I can't explain. After the spooky, stay for the spiritual. As a medium, I love sharing my work directly on the podcast by hosting a reading for my guest of the week. But you will also be my guest tonight as well at my seance table. I open up the space for a spirit to come close for someone listening to the podcast. Are you in need of a message of love and support from a loved one who has passed on? Listen to tonight's message and see if this one is for you. That's later on in the episode. But first, grab a life jacket. Let's visit a few haunted lakes and see what's in the water right now. My cousin and I have always been interested in the paranormal, and we love to investigate any nearby ghostly occurrences we come across. I had often heard that Beaver Lake was an odd place. When you first drive up to the lake from the road, there's this giant, ancient oak tree growing straight out of the center of the lake. This tree defies logic, and the sight of it immediately unsettles you. But it gets creepier. There are no fish in the lake, no turtles, no aquatic life, and the silence at the lake is downright eerie. No crickets or any insect can be heard. No birdsong to brighten the mood. And all of the vegetation at the shoreline is completely dead. It's like nothing that touches that water can live other than that giant, strange oak tree. Well, of course, we had to check this place out. My cousin and I grabbed a small tape recorder and headed out to the lake. We got there, parked, and prepared to make ghost-catching history. It was a quiet, early autumn day, and the air was just so very still around the lake. We walked out onto the dock, settled in, and set up our recorder. Not a sound, not a movement, not even a feeling, just a complete, all-encompassing silence. It was deafening. Even though we were pretty close to a major road, we heard nothing. We sat there for about an hour, nearly bored after a while, and then decided to leave. As we sat in our truck, we decided to check out our recording. After all, EVPs are mostly heard during review and playback. From the beginning of our tape, we weren't really hearing anything of interest, just us occasionally talking and the faint sounds of lapping lake water. With growing disappointment, we continued to let our recording play for another 3 minutes or so, then we decided to turn it off. Just as we were pressing stop, we heard a noise on the tape recorder. We pushed play again. What we heard was horrible. There was a low, guttural growl, followed by running footsteps that came right up towards us on the dock. The footsteps stopped. Then, a very quiet voice said, "Help, please." We turned on the truck, left the lake, completely shaken, but determined to go back there one day and perhaps encounter more. We never did go back. Honestly, I'm kinda glad we didn't. I was driving back from a friend's cabin, taking my time because the winding roads were barely lit by my car's headlights. It was late, well past midnight, and a heavy fog had rolled in, obscuring the trees and the lake to my right. I was exhausted but determined to get home, the eerie stillness outside only encouraging me to want to be safe at my own home. As I rounded a bend, I saw her. A pale female figure was standing at the edge of the road, seemingly soaked to the bone, her hair plastered to her pale face. She wore a tattered white dress that looked heavy from water, like she had been submerged. She raised a trembling hand as my car approached, and I hesitated for a moment, but pulled over. I couldn't just leave her out there in the middle of nowhere. I rolled down my window and I asked her if she was okay and if she needed a ride. She nodded and climbed into the back seat without a word. The car filled with a faint smell of lake water and damp earth. I saw her shiver, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Where are you headed?" I asked, glancing at her in the rearview mirror as I pulled forward onto the road. She looked young, early 20s maybe, but her eyes had an older, hollow look about them. She didn't speak, but I saw her point forward as I glanced at her again. I drove on in silence, the road ahead of me constantly evading my vision due to the fog. After a few minutes, I glanced back to ask her another question, but she was gone. My back seat was empty. The seat, however, where she had been sitting, was drenched. Water pooled in the fabric and dripped onto the floor. My heart raced as I pulled over to the shoulder to safely make sure she wasn't lying down or crouching on the car's floor. My car was indeed empty. The door hadn't opened. There were no footprints leading away. I stared at the wet seat as the realization hit me. She wasn't just a hitchhiker. She was something else, something tied to that lake. I never drove that road at night again. To this day, I can't shake the memory of her haunting eyes staring back at me through the mirror, and the chill that lingered long after she had vanished. When I was 7 years old, my family and I were staying with my uncle and his family in his cabin cruiser, which was tied to the dock in Swan Island Harbor. Around 4 o'clock in the morning, we all awoke to the sound of footsteps walking across the deck, inches above our heads. The footsteps walked from the bow of the boat, over the flybridge, down the ladder, and across the lower deck to the stern. Thinking it was a late-night caller, my uncle put on his boots, went up through the wheelhouse, and out to the lower deck where the footsteps were last heard. The fog was so thick outside that it took a couple of seconds for him to get his bearings. Upon investigation, he found that there was no one on the lower deck where the footsteps had ended. Then he noticed we were nowhere near the dock in the Swan Island Harbor, that somehow we were drifting out to sea. He had no idea where we were, in which direction we were going, or why we were no longer tied to the dock. He moored the boat in deep water and kept watch until the next morning. With the morning light and the lifting of the dense fog, he had discovered that we had drifted for miles the night before. The bow line that had previously secured us to the dock had been cut with what must have been a very dull knife. No other boats were nearby. That morning, we all went above deck, only to find, disappearing in the morning dew, fading footprints, bare feet, in almost a straight line from the bow to the stern of our boat. This year, when you're at another boring holiday gathering, make sure to turn to the person next to you and ask, "Hey, do you know any good ghost stories?" And then share the I Talk to Ghosts podcast with them. No more awkward silences trying to figure out what to say, what to talk about. Talk about ghosts. Talk about spirit readings. Share the I Talk to Ghosts podcast. Thank you and happy spooky holidays. Hello and welcome back to I Talk to Ghosts. My guest this evening is Michelle. Michelle, welcome to the podcast and your reading. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Well, thanks so much for meeting with me. Right off the bat, I was getting, no one ever comes in by themselves. I was getting a couple of different people, and maybe you can help me connect the dots. Now, the first person who was coming in was a rather quiet woman who she seemed a little timid and unsure. The type of person who was happy to defer the decision making, okay? And she was just like, oh, ask someone else. But she came in first. So I think she's just kind of connected to someone else. I don't know if someone lost a sister connected to the person that you're hoping to connect with tonight. Does that make sense?
Possibly.
Okay. But then another woman was coming in who seemed much more energetic and decisive and grandmother type. Did your mom pass away?
She did.
Okay. Does that sound more like her than the other person? Okay.
Definitely.
Okay. She was coming in with just knowing herself and being very active in her community and in her family. Does that sound like her?
Definitely.
Okay. Good. I always like to ask right away so I can just dive into this. Now, I'm wondering, just because of that dynamic that was coming in, I'm wondering if she's now reconnected with her sister on the other side.
So my mother passed almost 10 years ago.
Okay.
But within the last 6 months, I think, she's had 2 of her sisters have passed away.
Okay.
And one of them would have been more quiet and timid. The other was not.
Okay. So that energy makes sense because she was coming in first, shy, more of the shy, quiet type, didn't share much. She had a lot of things that were kind of hidden, or she was just a private person. And when I immediately felt her energy, she was, oh, no, defer. So I think she just wants you to know that she's here with you and wants to give as much as support as her sisters. And maybe as we're talking, we'll figure out why she came in first with those things. But your mom, was she involved with her church?
Yes.
She was showing me a cross. When she's showing me this cross, I'm feeling that sense of community and that was what was important more than just being religious.
Yes.
Okay. Was she involved with music too?
Yes. And at different times, she was the choir director at the church. And she was in the church choir. And yes, she loved to sing.
She's immediately like, yeah, my daughter's right. You do have a nice voice. Let me confess, I cannot sing. I cannot be recruited. But I appreciate it. Okay. This is really random. She's showing me a wizard.
I don't know.
Like, okay. A wizard type, like a person with like the cap and the robe, like and the beard, like Merlin.
Well, my dad's name is Merlin.
Get out. I've never met a Merlin before. Wow. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, that explains it. Okay. I want to see. She seems confident just in herself, and she wants to pass that along to you. Just like, oh, and like that's coming through with the messages that I have for you later. But okay, what is this? When talking about confidence, and it's not that she was assertive, but when I think assertive, her sister's coming back in. I don't know if you know anything about her relationships, but she's kind of indicating that there was someone assertive, not in the best way, that kind of made her go, you know what, I'm good, kind of brought out the I'm good in the background type of personality in her. Does that make sense?
A few years before she passed, she and some of her siblings had a falling out.
Okay.
And one sister kind of led that whole situation. The
charge. Yeah. Because like, I'm like, oh, your mom is confident. And then other sisters kind of like, I kind of disagree a little about the dynamics of things. But the communication breakdown, just different personality types were going on there. Yeah. Okay. Your mom wants to talk about grandchildren. She loves her grandchildren. And I'm just seeing all these bright lights around it. She really adored her family, and she still does. And she's just there. She wants you to know she is here, and she sees every little milestone. And she's just so proud. And I just see it as this bright light of just warmth and love. And she just really, really wants to convey that more than anything. She just connection and family and what we can do for others and how we relate to each other. This is like the feeling that's just flowing through here.
Yeah. And she referred to them as her 7 angels.
Oh, her angels. Yeah, yes. Exactly. A couple other, I see, I get shown little random images. I'm being shown a beaded necklace. Oh, jewelry in general. Yeah, jewelry in general, and furniture. I don't know if she had arthritis or her hands hurt from carrying heavy things. Did she move? Mm-hmm. I'm seeing like furniture moving and jewelry.
So she loved jewelry and actually worked part-time in a couple of different jewelry stores. And so she had a nice little collection after she passed where so I have, well, we all have pieces of her jewelry, but yes, that was very important to her. Okay. As far as moving, I'm not sure exactly, like the moving of furniture. Dad finally moved out of the house that they were living in at the time that she passed. So he's in a different house now.
Okay. This was more of and like, I'm not going to dwell here long, but I just like to explain myself. It was the feeling you get when you're picking up something heavy and then you finally get to put it down and how your fingers kind of ache from that. Yeah. Random. Yeah. I just I like to give what I get. And okay. Yeah, maybe if it ever makes sense, that's a good mystery, right? Okay. Let me see. I'm also getting a lot of imagery about circles and wheels and cycles of things coming back around, starting over again. And I know that's really general, but it seems very specific to me that, like, I'm seeing plants growing and coming out of the ground and growing big and then and going back down, almost like a time lapse of things. And I can appreciate that that's really general, and it might be hard to connect that to something, but and the imagery of a wheel or a circle, and then the notion of cycles and that time lapse was also just another thing I wanted to convey because it was coming through for me.
Okay.
Yeah. Can't think of that.
Not clicking just on that.
No problem. Pencils and crosswords.
Her father
did. He seems to have was he a sharp man? Just kind of had some clarity about him. Very cerebral type.
He's been gone so long. And I was so young. I didn't know him that well in that way. It's kind of sad.
What I can convey to you is that he did have he had a mental sharpness about him, and he had a clarity of things. Like, he was very good at just clearing through the mental clutter or any kind of complicated situation, and was able to bring a sense of simplicity to complex things. He's conveying that you have traits like that too.
I would say that I do. I don't know that my brothers would say that I do. But
no one's asking your brothers. He is saying that, no, you have an ability to simplify things and get rid of the emotional clutter, see the simple truth of things, and the ability to just, gosh, why can't this be simple? It should be simple.
Yes. Yeah, that's me.
So you tell them that. Yeah. So you tell your brothers that Grandpa agrees with you, and he's in your corner when it comes to all that. Okay. Yeah.
Going back to the wheel and the time lapse and cycle. 2.5 years ago, my brothers and I, one brother and I, and then the other brother and his wife, we kind of had a falling out. And so we have not really communicated. Mm-hmm. So the time lapse, and I'm trying to start to resolve that, or I don't know that will ever be resolved, but at least try and bring things back together.
Yeah. There's some agreement there of just, it feels like you're playing whack-a-mole, when it's like, all right, knock down this problem. Now there's this one. Now there's this and this. And it's like, it's exhausting. It's exhausting to kind of fight them off with a stick. Right. If you can keep your calm. Oh gosh. Is there one of them who's just, they either get nasty or they bring stuff in that just doesn't need to be involved. And sometimes it's even behind your back. And how can you combat that when you're not even there? Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm getting chills. It's almost like it starts without you and then you have to deal with the results of it. And, it's just kind of impossible to, how do you stop it if you're not even there when it starts,
Yeah.
The sense I'm getting is that if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And nothing is worth trading your calm for, and it's almost like, wow, it's funny. It's getting really cold in here. Know yourself, have your center, be yourself. And if you can let the past go, of course, do so. But it's almost like they have to be ready. They have to come to you.
Yes.
And they have to come to you organically. It's just, I'm being shown all this organic imagery about it.
So Dad wants everybody to be invited to Thanksgiving at his house. Mm-hmm. So we will all be together at Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. But before that and some of that is because my brother has, in small ways, kind of shown that he misses his family.
Good.
So, yeah. And we'll see, but I'll do what I can.
If you can know yourself and connect with yourself outside of those situations, when you're in them, you have your home base built in.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
But I have some messages for you as well, but I did want to check in and see if there was anyone else that you were hoping would come through this evening.
A coworker who was a friend.
Okay.
Didn't know if he'd be hanging around, maybe.
Sure. I think that I could see him hanging back because family is important, right? And but yeah, let's see. I'm seeing him giving a lot. The materialism wasn't important,
Yeah.
It's more like he would have given you the shirt off his back type of person.
Didn't have a lot to give, but
yeah,
was a big sweetheart. Yes. Yeah.
And kind of seeing challenges. He wasn't good about talking about it. He's showing me a lot of hidden. He kept things hidden. He'd rather. When I see someone turn like this, it's kind of like they're letting energy go past them, and also they're kind of like, yeah, I'm showing you half of me.
Yeah, he would make a lot of jokes and deflect. And he had dealt with depression and some things like that for a long time.
Yeah. He's conveying that. Do you know much about his childhood? I think he had a bit of a vulnerable childhood, and that taught him to be rather self-critical. He hated his vulnerabilities, and he was very self-critical about, I shouldn't be this way, I shouldn't do this. The compassion that he had for others, he wasn't able to turn it on himself and give it to himself. He just was very critical of himself and how he judged himself and denied himself some things in life. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When you worked together, did you have a female boss?
I did.
Okay. I'm trying to unravel what I'm being shown. Oh gosh. I'm seeing like in an office type situation, either seeing like colorful straws or colorful cups, just some kind of silliness about it.
Her office was across the hall from mine, and she kept like bite-sized candy in there,
Mm-hmm.
so that the guys would come through, and they'd come through and have grab a little piece of chocolate after lunch. And a lot of the time, that's when he would come through and make jokes and get a little after lunch laugh. And
he just kind of saw you as this ray of sunlight, always had a smile. And he wants to convey to you that you're getting where you're going. You're not done yet, but you're going to get there. And it's important to rest a little bit along the way, but you're going to get there. Does that make sense?
I think so.
He wants to bring that encouragement there for you, and just you're kind and you're warm and giving, and you also have to give that to yourself, and that you're gonna get there is what he's saying. Okay.
Okay.
A couple other messages for you, and they're kind of along that line. To know yourself, just know yourself. And that's when your mom's sister was coming in with, oh, the confidence you should have. If I were you, the things I could do. They're just very big cheerleaders for you. They're saying you're a good leader, and that you have the ability to nurture and guide potential and make things better with your input, to make things grow and blossom and become something, because you see the potential in it, and you're really good at just leading that. You see the potential, and your energy makes a difference. Is that something that resonates for you right now?
Yeah.
Well,
just at a crossroads in life right now.
You'll get there. They're all confident that you'll get there. And if you see the potential of making that decision, trust that your ability to nurture it and grow it and manifest it to be what it is, what you want it to be, that'll happen. Don't hang back and think, oh, it's risky to try. Everything is risky to try. But, if you see some potential that is just really like it's meant for you, it's going to make your heart sing, follow it, or at least be curious about it and explore it. And don't immediately shut it down, because you're going to get there. You will get there. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much for meeting with me today. This has been lovely, and so many people, and the variety that is coming in is just wonderful to see. They're all here for you. They're all here for you. I'm an empty nester, so it's nice to know that there are so many people coming in, because I'm by myself a lot. Yeah. Whatever you want to fill that space with, do it, and you're gonna, you'll see it and you'll make it happen just naturally. You'll have a talent for it. So yeah, absolutely. I wish you the best with it, and you're going to do great things. You absolutely will.
Thank you.
Well, before we go, do you have a personal ghost story that you would like to share? listener ghost story.
Years ago, when I was in college, I still lived at home. And at that time, my bedroom was in the basement. And so it was very dark already. And one night I woke up in the middle of the night. And even though it was dark, I could see the silhouette of a man, like even darker against the black. And I sat up and I looked and then I just laid back down and went to sleep. When I woke up in the morning, I remembered it and I was like, man, that was weird, because normally I would freak out and I was scared every little thing. And so the thought of a silhouette of a man. So I got up, went upstairs, and my father told me that that his dad had passed away during the night.
Oh, wow.
So I sincerely believe that my grandfather came to say goodbye.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't scare me. I was peaceful with it.
Exactly.
So, that's my ghost story.
Oh.
It's not a scary one.
No, they don't have to be scary. Yeah, there's a certainty about that. The fact that you weren't scared and you went back to sleep. Yeah, he was just there to say goodbye. And how lovely that he came.
He had suffered from, I can't even say it, but basically hardening of the arteries. And so for many years, he didn't recognize us, and he'd been in a nursing home. So that's why I think he came to say goodbye, that I know who you are and I love you and I'm moving on.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. Thank you so much for sharing. I think that the more people hear of experiences like this, the more hopeful they are, and that there is something. And that's exactly why I do readings as well, just to give people a glimpse that there is something, and we're always connected, and they are there for us, whether we can see them or not. Well, thank you again. This has been lovely.
Thank you.
Are you enjoying your spooky visit? Please support the podcast by liking, sharing, and subscribing. The ghosts may be talkative, but they are lousy at marketing, so every click helps. Tell your friends, and please leave a kind review so that others may join us. The spirits and I thank you. Hello and welcome back to I Talk to Ghosts. I have a message from the spirits this evening, and as I work near my seance table, I have with me white calcite. White calcite has very cleansing, divine energy. It is perfect for doing any work with any of your chakras if you feel like you want just a boost of divinity and clearing. White calcite has a lot of divine, loving energy associated with it. At this time, I'm going to clear my space and clear my mind, invite a spirit close with the intention of reaching someone who is listening to the podcast. Tonight, I have with me, this isn't very conventional, someone's ex-husband. He is showing me that regrettably your marriage did end in divorce. There was arguments. Since he has passed away, he's gained a lot of clarity in his soul and wants to acknowledge how sharp he was with you, and that he knows he wasn't the easiest person to get along with. He was very cerebral. He was you could describe him as cold when it came to reacting to life. And in the end, just your differences of approaches and everything didn't work out with the two of you. Yeah. He wants to offer that he knows he was a very critical thinker, and he couldn't escape that in his own mind, if that makes sense. It feels like he really threw himself into his work, which also feels really official and logical. He's sharing with me that he passed away rather suddenly, and the two of you didn't talk anymore, but it was still very shocking to learn that he had passed away. He really wants to take this opportunity with his message to you to really express for once how creative and emotional and beautiful he thinks your soul is, and that you deserve to be with good people who all of your gifts and talents really shine with their support. He's saying that you're a bit of a worrier, so try not to overthink. Find that balance in things and don't fixate on the worst case scenario. That's only one possibility of things that can happen. Also give some equal time to the what would the best case scenario be, and how can I react to that and prepare for that and take action with that in your heart. I think I'm going to leave it at that. If these messages and this connection resonates with you, please reach out, because I really do love to know. Thank you. Would you like a free spirit reading with me and record your reading for the podcast? Sign up for your chance to be selected by visiting italktoghosts.com/guest. And as an added bonus, if you don't want to leave your reading up to chance, I'll let you in on a secret. There's a discount offer to book a private session with me, so you can book a date and time for certain. Visit italktoghosts.com/guest for more details. Welcome back to I Talk to Ghosts. I promised you a personal story of mine involving some kind of unexplainable experience while on a lake. Well, this happened to me when I lived in Connecticut. And while we lived in Connecticut, we lived in this very rural area, way down a dirt road. And we were one of the houses that surrounded a lake, a private lake for the residents around there. And at the time living there, I loved being out in the forest. I loved being out on the lake. I was probably 12 or 13 at the time. We had a friend come visit us, a family friend come visit us from out of state. And I was always out on that lake. So naturally, I wanted to show him the lake while he was visiting. And our neighbor had a canoe right on the water that I could just drag out and use anytime. So we decided to do that one day. And we're out there and we're paddling around, just talking and catching up. It was a very calm day, not a lot of choppy waves or anything. And we were paddling around. This lake was sort of big. It was definitely on the larger side. It was large enough that you couldn't see both ends of it, but you could see all the way across. And even that length across was very wide. And, you know, when you're canoeing, after a while you kind of get tired and you kind of drift and take in the scenery of the lake. And I caught a motion on my left-hand side in the water, and this large mass approached the side of the canoe perpendicular, came towards us. Could tell it was huge, whatever it was, at least 4 feet wide. It went under the canoe, and as it did, it scraped up against the bottom of the canoe, and the bottom of the canoe rose up and kind of bowed. And then as it passed underneath, it dropped us and put us back down in the water. And we just sat there, shocked. And my family friend asked, what was that? Like, I don't know. Maybe it was a boulder in the water that we didn't see. And we paddled around kind of looking to see what it could have been, or if it was some kind of animal or creature. Hey, can we spot it, get a good look at it? And we couldn't find any structure in the water around that area to recreate this. And as we're paddling around trying to figure out a logical explanation and also discussing what could possibly be in this lake that would be that big, we kind of got spooked out and decided our time in the water was done, and we headed in after that. I don't know what this was. I really can't explain what would be in a lake in Connecticut that would have been that big animal-wise, and we couldn't find any kind of feature that we could have mistaken for an animal. And we decided we were done canoeing for the day, and we paddled back to shore, called it good. I think I might have asked the neighbors if there was anything large in the lake, and they just looked at me funny. Go away, kid. And with that, dear listener, we've reached the end of this episode of I Talk to Ghosts. I hope you've enjoyed the spooky lake stories that I shared with you this evening, as well as my mediumship work. Do you have any spooky lake stories of your own? I would love to hear about it, so please reach out. In the meantime, wherever you wander off to in this world or the next, just remember, come back and visit with me. Have a lovely evening and good night.